All right, next one up, we're going to talk a little bit of Cleveland Browns. And we're going to talk about possible trade destinations for. I mean, what happened, guys? What happened to Baker Mayfield?
Jeez.
What
Terrible.
happened? Like,
Terrible.
you know, at one point, I don't think any of us thought that we'd be talking about a trade of Baker Mayfield. But now I don't know that that's a silly concept at all. I mean, we're looking at a situation where he could legitimately be moved, and I think most people or many people wouldn't even be surprised. So I'm going to ask you, Paul, if
Yeah.
you were thinking about a destination in a trade for one Baker Mayfield, what's the team that pops into your head that says, hey, maybe that's where he lands?
Yeah, there's a clear name to me, but I'll answer it off the top that, like, part of the question, like, what happened to him? I think when you look at his history, he has a propensity for turnovers, and obviously you even saw that on Monday Night Football. And he had, I think it was 35 interceptions in his first 2 years. But the thing you loved is the touchdowns. He basically has a 2-to-1 touchdown reception ratio throughout his career, but that just hasn't happened this year. He had the 4 interception blowout against the Packers. So, like, all the turnovers were, again, it's not great. You'd prefer him to not have them, but he always had the touchdowns. They said, well, you get kind of the gunslinger mentality from Baker Mayfield, but recently you haven't gotten it this season, and that's where you get into the real issues. If he's having those turnovers and not the touchdown production, then it doesn't make sense. Baker Mayfield had a nickname here in New York when the Jets thought they were going to get him, because at the time it looked like Sam Darnold was going to be the number 1 pick. It looked like Saquon Barkley would go to the Giants, and the Jets were sitting there at 3 after trading up from 6, and Baker Mayfield was the wish of Jet fans. Now, unfortunately, we're good. We have Zach Wilson, but there's another team in New York that could use the same nickname. Give me Broadway Baker Mayfield to the New York Football Giants. And I think, quite frankly, it's a great fit, because here's the thing. You bring in Baker, they, according to the Adam Schefter report, they're bringing back Daniel Jones anyway. At a minimum, you have a guy that competes with him. The Browns, in any potential deal, are going to have to eat some of his salary. They already exercised his 5th-year option. So to make a deal similar to what the Panthers will probably have to do with Sam Darnold is eat a majority of his contract to move him and then get a minimal return. Now, the good thing, obviously, and the difference between the Darnold and Baker Mayfield is Baker Mayfield has shown way more than Darnold ever has, so maybe you get a better return on investment there. But that would be a great fit for me for the Giants. You get new scenery for Baker. He gets an opportunity to prove himself in the biggest media market in the world, which, may not work with him with some of the tiffs he's had in the media, but I think it's a phenomenal fit. I think it's great. I think he can rally the troops. He did it initially with Cleveland, a team that has been, mired in mediocrity for so long, and the Giants, quite frankly, have for a long time outside of the Super Bowl runs. I think he can rally the fan base. I think he's exactly the kind of quarterback the New York Giants need and could take them back to the playoffs, because Daniel Jones ain't it, baby. So give me Baker Mayfield to the G-Man. I love the fit.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I would agree with Paul if he picked another NFC East team, and I'm going to go with the Washington Football Team, because the Giants, I think they're going to bring back Jones, and I just don't see Mayfield fitting in New York. He's a head case already in Cleveland. I don't see the Maras really doing that, and I think what they always do is they like to, get a terrible backup quarterback, and that's what they did this year, getting Mike Glennon and whatever. But I think Washington Football Team makes some sense because Taylor Heineke, I don't think is the answer. I feel like a lot of people were just amazed by him, and I feel like it was sort of like a honeymoon type of situation where you like the girl in your honeymoon, and then after the honeymoon you're done with the girl. So I think.
Wow, what kind of honeymoon have you been on?
What kind of relationships have you been in?
There's a decent.
Yeah, it sounds
Divorces
like
happen,
friction.
my guys.
Like the
Divorce
girl on the
happens.
honeymoon, and then after the honeymoon, you're done with the honeymoon.
Yeah.
Happens after marriage.
Yeah, I
Brian,
know.
You know
quiet
that?
down. My fiance's in the other room for Pete's sake. We're
Yeah.
set to get married.
Divorces are very common. If you guys didn't know, so
Oh,
they're
geez.
very
Oh,
common.
it's
But we have like a
it's
relationship
it's
expert
funny.
now.
It's funny that the guy who's probably 21 is telling the guy who's been married for 21 years that divorces are
Hey,
common.
good for you. Good for you, Brian. But you look at the
That is
statistics.
hilarious.
But we could go all day with that.
That
But
reeked
I'll
of
just tell you, with
Similac.
Washington, I mean, what?
That reeked of Similac.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. But anyway, yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick, that was a failure from the get-go. I never understood that. You need quarterback competition. They didn't trade up for a quarterback. Mac Jones was in grasp, and they didn't do that. So I think they need to get a veteran quarterback. And I know Baker Mayfield has his warts, and I've seen him this year. He's looked terrible at times. Like, if people want to give him, the injury concerns and say, oh, he has a shoulder injury, that's why he's playing bad. Well, I'm seeing him, and it's also the lack of decision making, it's a lack of reading coverages, it's a lack of accuracy. It's just the whole 9 yards with Baker. And you haven't seen any of his traits from last year, so it's definitely tough to see if you're a Browns fan. And I think it has a lot to do with Stefanski too. I feel like Stefanski has to start running the football a little bit more. I really don't get that. I think a Browns player last week told the Browns to run the football, and they weren't. I don't even think they did it that much either against the Steelers. But nonetheless, I think Washington makes sense. They need a quarterback. They haven't had a quarterback in God knows how long. I think practically ever since I've been on this earth, of my 24 years, they've lacked a quarterback. And I know Baker Mayfield has looked terrible this year, but I mean, the quarterback class this year stinks, let's be honest. And look, you just have to do something. I mean, you can't just give it to Fitzpatrick for another year, and you can't just give it to Heineke for another year. You have to look at the market and assess. And Mayfield is probably up there.
What about you, Lorenzo?
Yeah, so Paul and Ryan, you took my my first two picks, and I also got to give a shout out to Vinny Sama, who covers the Giants for us at Heavy. He's done a tremendous job of staying in touch of what's going on with that QB situation. I am going to point out this. I'm going to call it a dark horse pick, but I started thinking about it. I think it could definitely make sense for Baker Mayfield, and it's out in the AFC West. I'm thinking the Denver Broncos. And here's the reason why. We don't know what's going to really happen with Teddy Bridgewater. He is a free agent for the 2022 class. It seems like they're not sold on Drew Lock. Maybe John Elway, with his QB background, maybe he could talk some sense into Baker Mayfield. Maybe that change of scenery could help for Baker Mayfield. I mean, Denver just, it seems like post Peyton Manning, they've been very unsettled overall at quarterback. Maybe Baker can give them that stability.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say this. I despite the fact that Mr. Sanudo said several, crazy comments about the institution of marriage and the honeymoon, I have no idea what he's talking about.
It's called the honeymoon phase. It's called the honeymoon phase, Brian, if you've heard of that.
But I don't think that actually relates to marriage. I think that's something that is a marriage term that is wrapped around other instances.
Brian, how's your relationship going, by the way? Are things good?
I mean,
it's been pretty great. It's been
great. That's good to hear.
Great.
Well, it can relate to Taylor Heineke, because a lot of Washington fans thought he was the answer, and I don't think they think that anymore. So
yeah, I definitely think that's the case. I would agree that Washington is the place for Baker Mayfield. I also think that we're beating Baker up a little too much. He has been just ravaged by injuries this year. And I can't act as though that's not the case. He still completed 62% of his passes. He'll probably eclipse 3,000 yards. If he plays next week, he'll probably go over that. I don't know what he had today. They lost, obviously, on Monday night. But I don't know, how well he played. Didn't play very well at all. Only 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 185 yards, only 16 completions on 38 passes, and got sacked 9 freaking times, which doesn't help. But he's a year removed from a 26 touchdown, 8 interception season, where he was healthy and played in all 16 games. So has he had a bad year? I definitely believe he has. Could Cleveland benefit from a change of scenery and changing up the leadership there at quarterback? I believe they could, but I don't think that he is a complete like reclamation project. Not after, excuse me,
Bless
not
you.
after, not thank you, not after one down season that's obviously impacted by injury. We're not talking about an old quarterback. We're talking about a guy who's 26. He won't even be 27 until April. So I think we all have a tendency of just there's no middle. I say that all the time. There's no middle. A guy is either the greatest thing since sliced bread, or he sucks. He's trash. What happened to him? Kill him. And I think there's often times where the truth is, and the true and the most accurate assessment is somewhere in the middle. But I do think that the Washington football team makes a lot of sense for him. Terry McLaurin is a fantastic wide receiver who will not, and I think this is a big thing for Baker. I think Odell Beckham Jr.'s personality was just entirely too big for Baker. And I think that it hurt his overall confidence and it hurt his leadership. And for Washington, he doesn't and won't have a personality on the offensive side of the ball like that. Ron Rivera is very much a player's coach who really has in the past made things very comfortable for his quarterbacks. And so I think that is the right type of situation in the right spot for him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a very good season if he were traded to the Washington football team. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he had a solid season with Cleveland, because I don't think he's done or just, he needs to sit and get healthy. I think the best thing probably for him this year was to have sat out when he hurt his shoulder and just just been out. He's not a guy who cries about injuries, so we don't even really know to what extent he is hindered. So I think that's a big deal. So that's my take with him. But yeah, I think I do agree with Ryan that the Washington football team would be a solid spot.
And I did see that Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated linked Mayfield to Washington. I think he linked them also to New Orleans. So that's another possibility. I honestly don't think he's going to get traded, but this is we're just throwing spitballs right now. And, if they were to ever think about it, I think Washington, New Orleans, those are the two teams right there that make a lot of sense, especially New Orleans. If you think about it, I mean, I think Breer brought it up too, that Breeze, 6 foot, Mayfield 6 foot. Payton's dealt with, that type of guy in the past. I know Mayfield is not Drew Brees, but it doesn't like sound outlandish. Him as a shot, a possibility to New Orleans as well.
The thing of it is that when Drew Brees left the San Diego Chargers, he wasn't Drew Brees yet either.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that everyone has to remember. Until a guy turns the corner and has the year that they're going to have, that changes the way we look at them. It is what it is.